Hi, I'm Deboki and this is Okidoki Boki, and today I am going to very belatedly do the Bougie Booktuber tag. This tag was created by Olive over at A Book Olive, and I will link to her video down below. She tagged me to do this last year when she posted that original video, and I just am finally getting around to it. This tag is all about book buying habits, and in the past, when I've talked about book buying habits, it's usually to talk about the fact that I tend to not buy that many physical books. This is a function of a few things, both practical and just philosophical. On the practical side, the two big things were budget and the fact that I was living in an apartment that I knew I would be moving out of within 5 years of when I was living there. And so like a lot of people, I hate moving, and I especially hate moving books. I love books in general, but they were a fucking pain in the ass to move, and so I just didn't want to acquire a whole shit ton of books that I was gonna have to figure out how to move eventually. And I also just didn't want them to be taking over my entire apartment at the time. So now I live in a house with more space that hopefully I won't have to be moving out of anytime soon. I also have more room in my budget, so my book buying habits have changed as well. But this is where some of the philosophical stuff, I guess, comes in. And before I get into that, I just want to say this is all stuff that is just built around kind of my own preferences and priorities. It is not a reflection in any way of what I think of your book buying habits. Everyone has their own ways that they want to deal with their time, their space, their money, all of that stuff. So I am not in no way judging anyone who likes to buy every single book that they see. I am just personally not one of those people. My underlying thing that I think is shaping sort of my overall approach or philosophy around buying books is that I want to buy books that I love, and obviously everyone does. I don't want to buy books that I'm gonna have to get rid of later. And so what that's looked like for me in the past is that usually I tend to buy books that I've already read because I know I love them, I know that I want them, I know I want to own them. I have already gone through the process of vetting the book and being yeah, I want that in my collection, in my reading materials, whatever, and so usually I do most of my reading with library books or ebooks. And so ebooks I think is kind of a shaky ground to talk about in terms of my overall buying philosophy, and I'll talk about that I think in relation to some of these questions down below, because it's also a thing that I've had to be more thoughtful about because it is so easy to buy them, But yeah, personally I love libraries. I love being able to just go get a book for free, enjoy it, support my local library, and also decide based on that whether or not I want to buy that book down the road. A big part of why I like libraries, why I like checking out books from the library, is because I feel more urgency around getting to finish a book. I feel like I always have a better sense of whether or not I actually want to read a book when I check it out from the library and have that sense of a deadline related to when it's due, and that helps me think oh, did I actually want to read it? Whereas if I just buy it and have it at home available all the time, it is so easy to put off reading, And so libraries for me are not just great because of the freeness of it all and also the community they provide. It's also a way for me to kind of keep my own reading in check. So that is a big part of why I love libraries as well. But like I said, now I have more space in my budget for books. I have more space just generally for books. And so that's caused some changes in my habits, and sometimes I've made some mistakes. And so I figured this tag would be a good way to kind of check in on all of that. So question number one, what is your average monthly budget for books? So I spend at least $15 a month for my Libro FM subscription. So that's for audiobooks. When it comes to physical books, I place about one order per month, and usually from bookshop.org. I usually spend about $70. And so what that usually includes is whatever book Nicole and I are reading for Nonfiction Book Club, because I've definitely found for that I want to have the physical copy so that I can annotate it, take notes, all of that stuff. That order will also usually include anywhere from 1 to 3 of the Sailor Moon manga, because I have been working on completing my collection back there, because I don't know why I don't have them from when I was a child and obsessively reading them all the time. I guess because I was just sitting in Barnes & Nobles and reading them and not actually buying them. The point is that I am completing my Sailor Moon collection. So instead of buying them all at once, I told myself, spread it out over multiple book orders so that you're being responsible and all that shit. And I'll also usually order 1 or 2 other books, usually nonfiction, again, because with nonfiction, I have found that I really prefer having the physical copy so that I can annotate it, take notes, all that good stuff. With ebooks, my spending is a little bit more variable, and a lot of that comes down to just the fact that a lot of times I buy a lot of ebooks when I'm in that mood for usually romance novels where I just want to read it immediately. I'll hear something that sounds good, I'll buy it and immediately get to read it. And that is a thing that I am working on training myself out of, because I have bought a lot of ebooks that way that I don't end up reading. And I'm going to talk about this more, I think, in a later question. Number 2, what's the most you've ever spent in a bookstore? So yeah, we're gonna get right to like the embarrassing thing. I don't remember how much this was, but this was several years ago. And so like, this was, I think, when I started to realize how easy it is to like spend too much on ebooks, but I have definitely spent several $100s on ebooks in one sitting. And it was definitely because I was about to be traveling. And I know some of this is informed by the fact that when I was little and I would go to India, I would pack like a suitcase just full of books, because back then, back when I was a kid, we didn't have ebooks. If you wanted to read, you had to pack all your books yourselves. I think I've had lingering issues with like feeling like if I'm gonna be traveling, I need to have all the books. And I definitely went on like a few bad spending sprees of like thinking I was gonna read all of these books. But now my Kindle is full of these books that I haven't read because I thought that I was going to read them, and then it turned out in the long run I was not actually that interested in them. And so that is why I have been working on training myself out of that impulse to immediately buy things on ebook. Question number 3, are you willing to pay full price for a brand new release, or will you wait until you have a coupon or there's a sale? Yes, I will pay full price, but I am also learning to be discerning because I have paid the price of full price. The big learning experience for me in the past year was like Ninth House, because I was super excited for that book. I really thought I was gonna love it. So I was like, you know what? I've had this rule in place to only buy books that I know I love, but like, I've got a good feeling about this, I'm gonna buy it. And then I bought it and I did not like it. When I look at it, I think about all the ways that the themes of this book like ultimately fail, and all of the ways that like it tries to be about privilege but ultimately fails. And I'm so mad. Actually, I have it. Do I have it here? I have it right behind me. Like, I get mad when I look at this book because it reminds me of all the ways that I'm like mad at the contents of it, but also because I think about the fact that I broke my rule and thought I was making a good choice, and I was wrong. I knew like what I really wanted was just to read it immediately. I didn't want to wait for it at the library, and I was just like assuming, yeah, I'll definitely like it. Turns out I didn't like it. And you know, like that's fine. Like in the grand scheme of things, it's not really that big of a deal that I bought a book that I didn't like, but it was definitely a good reminder going forward. Like there was another time where I saw The Starless Sea in a bookstore, and it was also like a signed copy, so I was like kind of tempted, you know, just because like the signed is sort of like this nice shiny thing, and so I was like really tempted to buy it. But then I made myself hold off because I was like, I knew that the reason I was interested in it was the same reason I was interested in Ninth House, which is like, you know, I've read this author's work before, and you know, they're not necessarily like an auto-buy author, but they're definitely someone whose work, like, you know, I find fun and engaging or interesting. And also, like, I know that this is a book that a lot of people are going to be talking about, so like I want to like also talk about it. And those are all solid reasons for buying a book, but I am trying to avoid having them be the only reasons that I buy a book. And so for The Starless Sea, I didn't buy it, and I'm ultimately kind of glad because I feel like, you know, I've heard mixed things about it. It's something that I would rather just kind of take my time with, check it out from the library at a time when it feels right, instead of like having it around, hearing mixed things, putting off reading it because of those mixed reviews, like that kind of thing. Like I'm glad that I ultimately decided not to buy it. Question number 5, what do you think is a reasonable price for a new hardback book, a paperback, and ebook? So in terms of what's reasonable, I don't necessarily know enough about like the cost of making these books to be able to say what I think is reasonable. But in terms of what I've been willing to pay on the higher end, I've been willing to pay around $20 for a new hardback, and I've been willing to pay around $10 for a paperback. Ebooks are tough because, again, sometimes what I'm paying for is that convenience if it's a book that I don't want to wait for, and that's part of why I'm trying to be a little bit more discerning about my ebooks, because I don't necessarily feel that $15 for an ebook that like I can't do anything with going forward is necessarily reasonable. It's just something that I have been willing to pay because I am impatient sometimes. Question number 6, is a signed book worth more to you? How about a first edition? I definitely don't care about editions. Like, I think that's something that maybe if I like read more about, maybe I would care, but like I personally like has no bearing on me. For a signed book, I don't think so. I definitely wouldn't be willing to pay more for one, so that probably is a sign that it's not worth more to me. I mean, like I said earlier, like The Starless Sea, I saw this copy that was signed at the bookstore, and it like made it feel more appealing to me, but I think ultimately I like recognize that that was sort of like a very, I don't know, superficial feeling in the moment of like, ooh, it's special, but like it doesn't really do anything for me. I could kind of see if it was like something really old and special, like maybe then, like if it was an author, I can't think of what it would be like, but like, I don't know. Like if Jane Austen signed a book, maybe I'd pay a lot, but probably not. Even then I'd probably be like, I can't read it. Like at that point you can't touch it, you know? Question number 7, what is your most valuable book, sentimental or actual value? I'm gonna go with sentimental because I think most of my books are pretty standard value. Okay, so I was just editing this question and I realized that I had given the incorrect answer to this. In terms of sentimentality, I was objectively incorrect about the answer that I gave. The most sentimental books I own are actually a collection between my husband and me. When we travel to other countries, we have this tradition where we will buy a copy of a designated book from a bookstore in that country, in whatever city we're in the language of that country that we're visiting. So for him, he will buy a copy of The Little Prince and I will buy a copy of Pride and Prejudice. To start off, like, this has been a really fun tradition to begin with, just because it involves going to bookstores and like hunting down copies. For some reason, Pride and Prejudice is not as easy as I like thought it would be. Like The Little Prince is definitely way easier, but it's a lot of fun to go try and find a copy. And it also has led to finding some really funny covers and stuff that are really like a ton of fun, like this like Colin Firth cover from the BBC Pride and Prejudice. And I like the idea of souvenirs, but like don't always know what souvenir it is that I actually want. So this definitely like cuts out the thinking time of like what is it that I want, and actually like gets me doing something in this city with like my husband where we like, you know, have to go hunt down this book. So there's a lot of sentimental value to just like having these experiences together, going to these countries together, and going on our little bookstore hunts to be able to find these books that we also just like have a personal affection for. So yeah, that is my most sentimental collection of books. And right now, especially like when it's like, well, I don't know when we're gonna ever leave the country again, they have like that added kind of feeling, I guess. Question number 8, will you pay more for a cover or edition you like better? Definitely. I think this is part of the exchange I've made where like if the point is for me to have books that I really love and don't want to get rid of, part of the thing that I am willing to do is to spend a little bit more for a cover that I enjoy looking at, and I accept that about myself. I am shallow about this shit and I am perfectly okay with that. Question number 9, what physical characteristics does a good quality book have? A thing that I've come to appreciate, especially because when I buy nonfiction books, I am trying to take notes on them. I really appreciate paper that feels good on the pen. And this is something that has come up for me too with like, as someone who does a lot of journaling, like I appreciate good paper, but I'm also not very good at articulating what it is I need out of the paper. There's a certain type of paper that is like kind of scratchy against a pen, and it like, I don't like the feeling of it. Like it's fully like that anxiety feeling. Like this is my motion that I'm making is like the tingles you get up your spine when it's like the wrong feeling, you know, like that's what I don't like. And I appreciate good paper to write on. I don't know what it's called. I don't know what the characteristics of it are. I just know it when I have it. Question number 10, if you won the lottery, what bookish things would you do with the money? I feel like the really cheap answer, but I'm gonna give it anyways, is that I would build a home library. But I think like aside from like that very obvious answer, I think I would either want to give money to my local library because they're amazing. Again, like I am very happy to live in a place with like a very, very good library system, and I want that for everybody. So like either supporting my local library or like if there are communities that need more help with their library, like that would be awesome too. Otherwise also I think it would be awesome to start like a literary magazine or to like create a fellowship for like early career book critics. I think that would be super interesting as well. It's not a thing I know how to do, but it would be, I think, something that would be cool to do. So that is the Bougie Booktuber tag. If you want to do this tag, you should do it. Yeah, thank you guys for following along with me as I think out loud about how I spend my money in books and stuff. And yeah, bye.